Candy, are you ready to start?
Sure, I'm ready to rock and roll.
Okay.
To all of you, I am apologizing up front. I am so much better seeing people's faces, so if I get stumbling along the way, I apologize right off the bat. But we're going to try to make this thing work for all of you. So this is one part of a three-part training that you have to go through in order to be qualified and to have received the grant management training. Tonight we're going to focus solely on global grants for the most part and what the expectations are as far as stewardship goes. And so we want you to understand the Rotary grant management part and the MOU and those kinds of things. But most of this will happen in increments. So tonight, the majority of the focus will be on global grants. The next webinar, the majority of the focus will be on district grants. And the in-person one at the assemblies will be more on the MOU and those types of things and understanding, and that way we'll have a lot of questions that can go along with that. So hopefully that makes sense to all of you. So we're going to talk really about the expectations both from Rotary International and the Foundation's perspective and also from our district's perspective. So I hope that makes sense to all of you. So there are two types of grants, as we said earlier, the global grants and the district grants, and again we'll focus pretty much on the global grants tonight. We'll talk a little bit about district designated funds. I hope most of you understand what district designated funds are. We will talk a little bit also about vocational training teams. And but the beautiful part about what we've done in the last number of years with Rotary Foundation grants is that more of the decision-making power has moved down to the club level and the district level. While it may seem that it doesn't really feel like that right now, I think by the time you get through the three pieces of the training, you will understand that it really does bring more of the control down to us rather than staff at the Rotary Foundation or rather than someone out there somewhere, but rather it brings it back right here to the district. And so the district designated funds are the funds that 3 years ago we put some money into the Rotary Foundation as a district, and 3 years later half of that comes back to our district and we get to designate how we spend that money. And it's very flexible as far as how we want to spend that. So our district every year goes through a process where we look at how much we have and how we want to spend that, and then we allocate portions of that to global grants, to district grants, and also to scholarships. So when you look at each year how much money is available, know that it was done thoughtfully and by a team of people who have tried to understand what the needs are of our clubs and what the needs are to do great projects and to fund as many projects as we can to make that go forward. One of the things that we want to be very clear about is that the reason we have this grant management training, the reason we have the MOUs, the reason that we have all of this piece that goes around it is that we want to be very good stewards of our dollars, because they're our money. That's the money that we put in as individual Rotarians and as clubs. And so we want to make sure that we are spending the money the way that our donors, our Rotarians, want it to be spent. And we want to make sure that the financial controls are in place in order to make that happen. And we've learned a lot of lessons over the years in grants and in projects that we've done. And so a lot of what the grant management is now trying to focus on is how to mitigate any challenges that we faced in the past. And so we want to know what the needs of our beneficiaries are before we go in and do a project, because we've found over the years that while Rotarians always have a great heart and always want to do projects, that unless we really understand who is receiving on the receiving end of our projects, if we don't really understand what their needs are, we could put in something that really doesn't meet their needs. And so part of what we want to do is make sure that we've done that, okay? And then we also want to make sure that we're good stewards of our donor dollar, and so we follow that. We want to look at what successful grants look. So we want to make sure it meets the community needs. So so therefore we have to have a partner club in the community that or nearby community that understands what those needs are and that are able to go in and talk to them about what their needs are. If any of you have ever heard me do a foundation speech before, you've all heard me talk about the club that decided one day that they've been doing all these projects in Mexico, and that they decided, well, we're going to just go in and put a computer lab in this little school in this town where we go all of the time. And fortunately for that club, they sent a couple of people down. I think it was an excuse for a fishing trip, but they went down to this village in Mexico, and they went to the Rotary Club, and they said, hey, you know, we're going to come in and we're going to put a computer lab in this school right here in your little community. And the Rotarians said, well, isn't that just great? But this school only has electricity 6 months out of the year, so how do we handle it the other 6 months? So fortunately, they kind of got their needs assessment done a little bit backwards, but there was a needs assessment done. And at the end of that conversation with that Rotary Club, they were able to discover that what those kids at that school really needed more than anything else was a school bus to get them to school. Because if they got them to school, they could do a lot of other work with them, because a lot of kids couldn't get to school because they lived so far away. So knowing what your community needs are, knowing what the projects are, is going to be helpful to you. Knowing that it's sustainable, and sustainable, we're going to talk a lot about sustainability later, but it really makes sure that once the Rotarians are gone and once the project is, the funding of the project is stopped for that part of it, that it goes on a long time after the Rotarians have left. So you want to involve as many partners, and the more partners you involve, the more Rotary clubs and others that can help you make this project successful, the more successful your project will be. And again, knowing who your partners are will help you also to maintain good stewardship of the money. And so if you have a relationship with someone in a Rotary Club in a community already, that's a great benefit to you as a club and to the people that are doing the project. So what is your needs assessment? So the best thing to do is have somebody talk to the community. So whether you have people from your club that are interested in going to that community and doing a needs assessment, or whether you work just with your partners in a club nearby that can talk to the people who are going to be receiving it and really know and understand what it is that they want. And then determining what your resources are, including your resources are your club, but also the club that you're matching up with, and also what's there in that community. Because one of the beautiful things about when we do some of these grants and some of these projects is the more we can buy in country or in that community, and the more we can involve the people there making it happen and making it work, is it's going to continue and make them proud of it, and they're going to have ownership of this project. And so we want to continue to do that. So determine what your resources are in both people resources and also in other types of resources that you're going to have there. So what are you going to do? So part of your requirements are that you have a 3-person grant committee, and that each person on that committee knows what their role is and know what their objectives are going to be, and know what their responsibilities are going to be. And it is very helpful that that you have Rotarians managing this program. And so if Rotarians are great at communicating with one another and understand their roles, it makes it much easier, because the Rotarians have to manage the projects that receive funding from the Rotary Foundation. We can't let somebody else manage those projects for us. And so both the host sponsor and the international sponsor have to have the committees of 3 Rotarians. And so if you have a great relationship and a great communication plan with your partner club or clubs in that area, it's going to make your life a whole lot easier, trust me, especially when it comes to the end, when you're reporting out and things like that. If you have somebody that's really good at communicating with you and you understand what their roles and their responsibilities are. And you're going to have to establish a budget. You're going to have to understand what the costs of things are, and how to and have your ducks all in a row. So you have to understand all the parameters of your project in order to establish a really solid budget that can go forward as you make it happen. And we all know that things happen sometimes, so a contingency plan for in case something goes wrong is really good, because you and your club need to be protected. and you have some liability for this project. So you want to protect your club as best you can by making sure that you have contingency plans in place to make that happen. You're going to want to establish a monitoring and evaluation plan. So what that means is you're going to have like objectives and different check-in points where you can monitor your progress, make sure that, again, and when you're communicating back and forth, that you understand, okay, at this point we said we were going to be here. Are we there? And if not, what do we need to do? Maybe we have to call in our contingency plan, but you need to have some sort of way of evaluating it. And so having a plan for evaluating and monitoring your progress will make your life a lot easier. And of course, you have to have a document retention plan. And if you look at the MOU, it tells you exactly what you need to do before you even get funds, so that you know how long to keep them and what that looks like and all of that. And you should have all received, Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, but they should have all received the grant management guide, the Guide to Global Grants.
Yes, they were supposed to have received
Okay.
Guide to Global Grants.
Okay, so the answers to all of these questions are really in there, but some of the things that you want to think about is who would you include on your committee, and what kind of system, when you look at the system to store the grants, who is going to be responsible for that, and what is the best methodology you can use. And another thing that you want to probably think about is, does everyone on your committee have access to the records? If so, if not, why not? And if so, why? Because you really want to have a really clear understanding of who's responsible for what, and make that happen. When you're looking at your budget, okay, Gary, can you advance that slide for me? So when you are creating your budget, the 4 things that you really want to look at is, a realistic budget. So there's nothing worse than getting into a project and finding that you didn't have adequate funding for something, and all of a sudden you're scrambling around trying to figure out what to do. So make sure it's realistic and comprehensive enough to ensure that there's enough funding for everything. You should use a competitive bidding process to ensure that you get the highest quality goods at the best prices. So any of you that have ever been involved in a competitive bidding process would understand this, but it really is good to have. It helps you as a committee also understand and have good documentation. As we went out, we looked, and we found the best at the best price, and so your transparency and your stewardship looks really good when you do that. And you should keep records of any bids that you receive. Conflicts of interest, you should disclose any potential or real conflicts of interest, especially as it's related to the budget. So as we know, Rotarians are involved in all of our communities and own businesses and all of that, and so you have to make sure that if there's any chance that there could be a conflict of interest, that you disclose it, and that we have a plan in place to mitigate that conflict of interest. So if as an example, if a Rotarian is owner of a business that you may be buying something from, they may be in the community where the project is taking place, and there's a Rotarian that's an owner of the business that you may be purchasing from, that Rotarian cannot be on the committee because that would be a conflict of interest. But also you still need to disclose that it's a Rotarian-owned business. And I hope that makes sense to everybody. Even if they're not personally gaining anything, it still could be a conflict of interest. So you're better off being as transparent and as upfront as possible, rather than having it come back later to make that happen. Okay. So your grants in the global grant, your grants have to be in one of the areas of focus. Rotary has looked around at all of the things that we do, and the things that make the most sense and have the opportunity for the most sustainability fit into these 6 areas of focus. So as you look at projects that you want to complete, and as you look at ideas for them, make sure that it's going to fit in one of these 6 areas of focus. And that's regardless of if it's a if you want to include scholarships with that, if you are going to include a vocational training team, but the end result of this project has to fit in one of the 6 areas of focus. It can definitely fit in more than 6 areas of focus, more than one of the 6 areas of focus, but it has to fit at least in a minimum of one of the 6 areas of focus. So economic and community development, as an example, that can include things like, microcredit and things like that. But each area of focus has specific goals that should be used to refine the projects, and at the end of the day, know that it's going to meet the real community needs and make that happen. Okay.
Candy?
Yes.
Just an added word on that. There is a lot of information about areas of focus and on the Rotary website under the grant categories. So it goes through an objective statement for each one of these areas. So it's a real helpful thing if you look at those.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yeah, so the 6 areas of focus are important, and there's a lot of information on that. So thank you for sharing that, Gary. Okay, and then the next thing I want to talk about is sustainability. The sustainable projects. This is a really important thing that Rotary has looked at, because again, kind of going back to what I said earlier about, Rotarians have these big hearts and they want to go in and do a project, and they look and they see this need and they just go in and they do it because that's who we are. We're doers and we want to get it done. But we found over the years that, we dug a lot of wells that are no longer producing water for the communities because we didn't think past, what if the water table drops, or what if something gets broken? We didn't train anybody in the community to go in and fix that, or to understand how to make the parts or anything like that. So we want to, as the sustainability piece has come to, we want to give the community the skills and knowledge to, maintain it long after we're gone, and after the funds have been expended. So to make sure that it really does benefit the community. So you have a handout on the handout side, and Gary's going to bring that up to talk a little bit about the 6 steps to sustainability. So this is in your handouts on the side. It's in your manual. It's in a lot of places. So you want to do all of these things that it says. Encourage local ownership. Key community members who can help keep it going long after you're gone. So part of your planning for your project is to know who those people are that can do that, and then provide the training. And the training can be done in many ways. And as part of your project, one of the things you may want to do is include a vocational training team, where you send a team to that community to teach them how to either manufacture, build, repair, continue on that project. And you can also bring a team from that community here to learn from the experts in that field. But having experts in that field, both on the ground there, because we've taught them, or because they already have that knowledge, is really helpful. And then the more you buy local, again, the more you're going to be helping the community, because if we're buying local, then it's an additional benefit to that community that we're gonna work with. So you can when you work with the local community and you work with local organizations, you find out who has the experience, who has the knowledge, who has the equipment, and who has the buy-in, and it's really helpful to you as a group to make that happen. And so if you can identify people who are willing to assume leadership roles in all of these areas in that community, you are leaps and bounds ahead of the curve when you make this happen. And again, and finding local funding. So one of the things that you cannot do is require that the beneficiary put money in to make the project happen. However, you can look at them to sustain it long after you're gone. So, as an example, somebody in the community, all the community people, when they use whatever it is that you've put in as your project, you know, they put in $1 or something, and that money is put into an account where then long after the grant funds have been expended, they can continue it on in perpetuity or for however long it's reasonable, and that it works within their cultural needs and values. So, and then again, I talked earlier about you really need to understand how you want to measure your success and what the outcomes are going to look like, and knowing how you're going to collect that data is really important to you. The figures should ideally demonstrate change for at least 3 years, because that gives you at least a long-term look, a good period of time look at how your project is working and how your objectives are being met, and looking at and being able to have enough data to look at over a long period of time. And I'm gesturing with my hands, and you can't all see me gesturing with my hands. So that's what it makes it look like it. I do not want to turn my camera on. So education, training, and buy-in is really a big key to sustainability in a project. And with that, I think we're going to take a little break here, Gary, and you're going to
actually
try a little.
You get a break. I'm going to do a couple of polls.
Yeah, I'm a break.
with people just to see how we're doing, and so let me put up the first one. Curious to see how many of your clubs have actually worked on global grants before. Looks like with 96% of the vote, I don't know how we did that, but it's a 50-50 break between who's global grants before and who hasn't. So the second one is on district grants, and we're jumping ahead just a little bit. We're curious about the same question. How many of you or your clubs have done district grants or received district grants? Almost 70% of you have done district grants and received them. That's great. So great. I appreciate it, and that was good information that we can use in the future. And now, Candy, are you ready to go through applying for a global grant?
On your screen, I hope you're seeing that we're now talking about applying for a global grant. So we in this district have established a different process than some districts, but we think it's more helpful to clubs as they go forward, because they're going to it keeps you from spinning your wheels, and there's a lot of folks in our district that their job is to help you figure out if it's a viable project, and how much, and if there's even going to be money available in DDF and all of that. So okay, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to do a district grant proposal, and you'll find this, of course, on the District 5160 website, and you will fill out the information and submit it to our grants management team, who will then work with you on making sure that the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, and that it's something that they would look at funding. So particularly and you would need to do this if you want DDF, district designated funds. If you want some money that can be matched at the foundation level dollar for dollar, then you're going to have to make sure that you work with the team on the global grant proposal. You the district has said yes, we've got some money, and so you go to Rotary.org, and you go through the online application system. It's Rotary.org/grants, and you'll complete the first steps by hitting the start button. And it'll give you general information about the grant activity, best practices, and after navigating through those steps, you'll be able to start your grant application. So any grant application that has not yet been approved will show up in the application section. If the grant has been approved and is still open, it'll be in the open grants section. So you will be able to see where what status is, and then once it's closed, it'll go in the closed grants section. Huh? It's pretty obvious. And then the attention needed part talks about alerts to any action that is needing to be done. So you will have, once you start the process, you will actually get someone from the Rotary Foundation that will also be helping you on this, and they will, once they've evaluated the grant, they may come back to you with things that either are needed, desired, and so forth, and so you'll know that certain things need to be done in order for you to move on to the next step. So they're pretty good about communicating that with you. Next slide, Gary, please.
Okay.
Before you start your application, you'll have to have your primary contacts from the partner clubs. So you have to know who they are and how to get a hold of them. And then you got to decide what you're going to call your grant. And in order to do anything, you need to have that done. And then you're going to have a detailed project implementation plan and a budget. And you can always call, and you can always through the messaging system on this in this application process, you can always talk to somebody at Rotary staff, and they can help you, and so that you know it's complete. So I would always, even if you're 99% sure that you've done everything right and it's complete, I would still ask them to look at it for you, just so that it helps you ensure that it's complete, and it saves you some time later on down the line. And and then depending on how big your project is, how much money you're asking for, there may be multiple steps to the grant review process. So up to $50,000 is at one level, 50 to, 100, Gary? I'm trying to remember off the top of my head.
Yes, I believe it is,
Yeah.
and then 100 to 200.
Right, yeah. So depending on how much DDF money you're looking for, or how much foundation money you're looking for, it will depend on who has to look at it. And so the better your application is done and completed before you process it through, it makes it easier for the different people who have to look at it and review it to approve it for you. Once they approve your grant, then the primary contacts that you've identified will receive a formal notification, and then your club president, if it's a club generated grant, has to sign it, and the District Rotary Foundation chair, so that you have a legal agreement, and so you can start working on the grant. And so you should have as much of your project decided and completed as far as the implementation steps, budgeting, and all of that before you really go into the application process, if that makes sense.
It does. To the review committee on the district level, because that's your first step. So if we can add those things in. The other thing that I'd like to add at this point is the Fred Kalignan is setting up during his year, and I'm going to continue it, a group of Rotarians who are experienced in global grants and actually district grants also, to help clubs and individuals write their grants. And again, besides that help, there is a lot of information on the RI website. So there was a quick question about, I think Andy had on the previous screen, he didn't see the open and closed grants. These are screenshots of my screen, and because I'm stewardship chair, I can see all the grants in the entire district and the ones that are open or closed over the last several years. So that's why that screenshot's a little bit different than what you may see when you go into the Rotary.org website. There was also another question about funding, and I think we're just about ready to get there. If you're ready, Candy.
I'm ready. Let's go. Okay. So So this was for the 15-16 year, as you can see on this
Whoops.
slide.
Actually, the writing down below was updated for the 16-17.
Yeah, so
You can
I was
needle me.
teasing you, Gary. Sorry.
Yep.
This is actually for this coming up year. And so District 5160, so this is how much money the district is willing to put up out of district designated funds so long as there's money still in the pot. But so limited to no more than $20,000 for the first participating club and $5,000 for each additional participating club for any one project. And that is, so what that tells you is that there's an opportunity, the more clubs you get involved, the more opportunity there is for money to be put into your project. And for those of you who have heard of Walt Schaefer's Tanzania project or been involved with that project, you know, he took full advantage of that particular thing. He got a lot of clubs involved, and they could put in money. You know, clubs could put in a couple of $1,000s and be part of a very big, very successful grant that, you know, my particular Rotary Club, I think we put in $5,000, and, you know, we told everybody, hey, we did a $250,000 grant in Tanzania. You know, we forgot about the other 20 clubs that were out there. But what it tells you is that there's money, and the more folks that you have involved, actually the more resources you have available as well. And no individual project allocated more than $50,000. But there's an asterisk next to that. Gary, do you want to explain that?
Sure. And it just got modified at the district conference. There is a provision in our district policy about district projects. And so what that means is if you want more than $50,000 for your project from the DDF, you have to get 60% of the district clubs to agree with you. So it's a simple process of just polling them, basically, and then we'll verify it that you have 60% of the district clubs supporting you. And this is intended so that if we're spending that much of the district designated funds on one project, we want to make sure the district as a whole is pretty much behind it all the way. So, and that was one of the other questions we had here. Briefly, I'll back up. And let's see. Andy was asking about how much money in the last 3 years. I don't have the last 3 years right in front of me, but I'll look up what our DDF this year is and announce that here shortly. There were a couple other questions that I can go through briefly. What's the best way to find a partner club in a foreign area to partner with? And there are a number of things on the RI website that are intended to enhance that process. There's Rotary Showcase and others where they'll actually list what they're looking for, whether it's just dollars or bodies to go or a doctor to do a certain project in a certain country. So there's that resource. There are what are called project fairs in a number of countries now where Rotary clubs in a country in Nicaragua or Nigeria will figure out the process or figure out the grant that they want to do that their communities need, and they will do the needs assessment, talk to the community, get it all written up, and then they'll present it at these project fairs to attract partners to help them implement it. So, and those happen. Unfortunately, you or the clubs have to get you there to those project fairs, but it's for the people who've gone, it's been a very good experience, and they've come back with lots of potential grants. So I think it's back to you, Candy.
Okay. So I think we'll move on to the next slide.
Yes.
And talk a little bit about the financing. Okay, so the this statement, the first statement, the minimum budget for a global grant is $30,000, and that's a little bit misleading, only because the Rotary Foundation will not write a check for less than $15,000. So you have to understand what the match looks like. And so match is spelled out here. So any money that you get from the district, any DDF funds that you get from the district is matched 100% dollar for dollar so long as the funding remains available. And Rotarian and non-Rotarian cash contributions are matched 50 cents to the dollar, or 50%. So knowing that, so that means that you can't have, you can't have less than $15,000 written from the Rotary Foundation, and so understanding that piece of it helps you when you're budgeting. And then also understand this, and this is a new thing that was put in place, and a 5% surcharge on the cash contribution. So you have to build that into your budget as well, and that is to cover the costs of doing these projects, cover the cost of monitoring the projects and all of that. So you can get donations from organizations, businesses, and other people, and those are all matched 50 cents to the dollar by the Rotary Foundation. That 5% of that money has to be earmarked for a surcharge, or you have to have a 5% surcharge on top of that, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, maybe I'll break in right here and answer that funding question about how much DDF the district has for the 16-17 year. For district grants this coming year, we're going to have $157,505. So a lot of money. And for global grants, we're going to have around $250,000. I say around because we don't know what part of our DDF comes from the endowment fund, the interest on endowment funds that have come out of our district, and we won't have that total number until about October, but it should be in the $250,000 range for global grants, and again, 157 and change for district grants. And let's see, I had a couple other questions real quick. They wanted to know how much money goes to global and how much goes to district grants. The basic calculation is, right now our district has decided to split it 50-50. So the money that comes in each year from the Rotary Foundation, we take 50% of that, and in this year it would be $157,000, so that goes to district grants. The additional $157,000 goes to global grants. The reason there's more money in the global grant right now is if we don't spend the money every year in global grants or district grants, it rolls over into global grants. Hope that makes sense.
It does to me.
Okay.
Okay, so let's move on to the next slide if we can, please.
Okay.
So here's some more things to know for your global grant financing, and I think the second bullet I think I already touched on is that you can't take money from the beneficiaries in order to get a grant. So you can't, they can't buy their way into a grant, and that muddies the water. So we won't do that. Funds can't come from other grants, and the contributions are credited to the donor. So, if you're looking for Paul Harris credits and all of that, the donor or the donor club, they do get the contribution credit, and also they also get the tax receipt for contributions to the Rotary Foundation. So if you get a business to give you $5,000 for your grant, they get the contribution credit for that. And I hope that makes sense. And the international sponsor has to provide at least 30% of total sponsor funding. So if you're asking your sponsor group to, come up with a certain amount, then the club that you've determined as your international sponsor has to have at least 30% of whatever you're asking for as far as their contribution.
And I should clarify here that if it's a global grant, most times our district will be the international sponsors. So there are some reverse grants that are being worked on, and where the grant is sponsored by a club in another country, but the actual project is here in the United States. So that's just a clarification.
Right. So, so a couple of things that you're going to want to think about is, as you go forward, is how do you want to raise money for your grants? Do you want to, how are you going to raise the cash? And how might you motivate some donors to give you more? So some of the things you might want to think about as you're getting ready to finance or put your financing plan together is look at how you raise the cash contributions, and then how you might motivate others. What's in it for me is always a big question that people might want to know when you're asking them for money. So the better structured you are in knowing what it is that you want to do and who it's going to help, and all of that will really benefit you in the long run when it comes to raising money for your grant. Okay, we have 10 minutes left, and how many slides? 5 slides. A couple things you really need to understand and read really carefully is understand the terms and conditions for any grant, but in this case we're talking about global grants. So you want to really understand what is required, and so the more front end work you do, looking at the manual, looking at the website, and understanding what your project has to do in order to comply, the easier it is for you down the line, and then you don't catch yourself going, well, I didn't know that. And you have to be qualified. So if the proposing club isn't qualified, you're spinning your wheels. So make sure that the people on the grant committee have taken the training, that you have an MOU in place, memorandum of understanding in place, and make sure that if you have any conflicts of interest, that they're noted in the application. Even if it's a really far-fetched conflict of interest that you think, wow, this probably will never happen, that good old Guy Murphy might show up. So any potential conflict of interest, please make sure that you note it going forward.
Yeah, and we should mention that conflicts of interest by themselves do not cause the grant to get thrown out or disqualified or anything. It's the ones that don't get disclosed that are discovered later that causes lots of problems.
Yep. And that, yeah, and the good news about that is if you understand that, if you disclose it ahead of time, and if you talk to the folks who are helping you with your grant, they'll tell you. They're very happy to tell you, what that looks like, and whether that can cause you any problems down the line. Okay, so you have to certify that you've reviewed the Guide to Global Grants, so you all have that. And you know what? Actually, that publication is actually one of the better publications I think they've come out with lately. It's very clear, it's very concise, it gives you really great tips on the side, and so make sure that when you're applying for a grant that you've reviewed it, and so that you can certify that you've done that. But I think it's a pretty good document, I think, or guide.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And yeah, and because of the way our grants go, and because they cross over Rotary years and all of that, make sure that your president of 16-17, I think most of you on this call are the 16-17 presidents, but there are a few of you that are presidents-elect on this call. Make sure that if you're the lead club on that both the president and the president-elect sign off on it, because again, you're going to have that responsibility, and as the officer of your club, you're going to hold that responsibility. So it's good that you know what's going on and that you've approved this grant going forward. Again, the completeness, that's the more complete you are, just the easier it is to your life and to who's ever the one submitting all the grants, and the meaningful benefit to the community. And that's what we're really here to do, is to really help our fellow man, and the more meaningful it is to the folks, and the more you can understand how meaningful it is to the folks that you're serving, again, it helps you raise money, and it helps you to provide that sustainability down the road. Yeah, feasibility. So, what does that look like? Is it going to really go the way it's planned? And I think that the better understanding you have of the community, or that your partners have of the community, the easier it'll be to understand whether it's going to be implemented as planned. But again, we talked earlier about contingency plans and all of that. Make sure that you have all of those in place so that the project can go forward, because we don't want to waste people's time, and we want to put this money to use out there doing really good work in the world. The things you have to know is how much longer after the grant period. So the grant period ends, you've got, but you have to know, is it 3 years, is it 5 years, could it be going on in perpetuity, and what does that look like? Because, if you're educating people and they're educating the folks behind them, it could be a much longer impact. And so make sure that you put that all into your understanding and your thought process as you go forward, and know what the ongoing commitments are. So know what the community is prepared to do after the grant period ends, how they're prepared to keep it going, and make it happen, and to benefit their local community as well. So one of the things that they look at is, the number of clubs and districts supporting a grant. The more clubs you have, the better off you are, and the more money you'll probably have to make it happen. So, again, I use Walt Schaefer's Tanzania project as an example, because he's done a really good job at understanding all of that, and been able to go back and do additional projects and programs, and really has made a huge impact in that one community, or in several communities right in that general area. But it's met more than one area of focus. It's met 3 areas of focus, 4 areas of focus, and it started out really with a clean water and sanitation project, and yet it's gone now to education and to health and many other things. And so and part of that was because he had a number of clubs that were able to support him and make it go forward, and he had a great partner on the other end at the Moshi Rotary Club in Tanzania. So having that great partner who you can communicate well with and who understands is really helpful. We're also at the district level. One of the things that we look at is, how is your club, the lead club, the proposing club on that, how have you done over the last 3 years in giving to the Rotary Foundation? If you are low in your annual giving, and there's another grant out there that is their annual giving is per capita higher, it looks on the surface as if they're more invested in the Rotary Foundation. So that's one of the things that they look at. That doesn't mean that if you come from a community that isn't quote quote rich and doesn't have a lot of assets, doesn't mean that they're going to definitely turn you down. But knowing that you support the Rotary Foundation and have continued to support the Rotary Foundation as a club is important to the folks that are evaluating our grant proposals and grant applications. So I was just saying, know that it is important to understand that that's part of the deal. Go ahead, Gary.
Oh, I was just going to, we've referred to them, the review panel, a number of times, but I wanted to let people know that we have a 10-person committee from Rotarians all over the district who reviews both global grants and district grants. And they give their recommendation to the panel that decides, and they're the ones that evaluate all this material and everything. And all the evaluation criteria is in the district policy that you got a copy of, or it's on the district website there also. We've got a couple of minutes left, so let me run through a couple of quick questions, and some of these are going to be answered in more detail at the next 2 sessions, but Paula wanted to know about, if you're requesting $5,000, does it mean your club has to come up with $2,500? For district grants, that is correct. And so that $2,500 though can come from your club or multiple clubs or outside individuals, that type of thing. Unfortunately, the best place to see examples of grants are the district website. Underneath the Foundation Grants tab has a listing of grants, district grants that have been granted for the last several years, like 4 years. And so that's a good way to get an idea what the grants are, and then you can contact that club to find out more detail on it. As I mentioned on global grants, both we're going to have these, I won't call them expert committee, but consultants who will help you and gather information and put your project together, and they'll have access to more information on how grants go together and examples of them. But again, you can go to the Rotary Showcase on Rotary.org, and they've got examples of good grants that you can read about there and the types they are. And with that, I think we're just about out of time.
It is 7:30 on the button, and I do want to say that when you come to the live session at the assembly, if some of this still isn't clear to you, we're happy to help you make it hopefully clarified even more, and we'll talk to you on the district grants on our next webinar.
So again, thank you very, very much. Thank you very, very much, Candy, for being our presenter tonight and doing a really great job. And with that, good night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.